When Oliver Stone released Platoon in 1986, it changed the way audiences looked at the Vietnam War on screen. Up until that point, most Vietnam War films either glorified the combat, sidestepped the politics, or focused on outsiders looking in. But Platoon wasn't interested in making the audience feel good or heroic. It wanted to drag them through the dirt, smoke, blood, and moral decay of a war that left deep scars on an entire generation. This movie wasn't just entertainment. It was a personal exorcism, a cinematic scream, and a challenge to anyone still clinging to the illusion that war builds character or honors glory. At its core, Platoon is a story about war told from the inside. Not just physically, but psychologically and spiritually. It's told from the perspective of Chris Taylor, a young soldier played by Charlie Sheen who volunteers for Vietnam out of some naive sense of duty and patriotism. He gives up college and comfort to serve, but what he finds in the jungle is chaos, fear, and two conflicting visions of what the war, and morality itself, is supposed to be. Let's start with the world Oliver Stone builds. The jungle is a living, breathing entity in this film. It's not just a setting, it's a character, oppressive, suffocating, crawling with danger. You can feel the heat, the sweat, the bugs in every scene. Stone, a Vietnam veteran himself, doesn't let the audience sit comfortably at any moment. The camera work is often handheld, the editing jumpy, the sound design filled with distant gunshots, choppers, and the constant rustling of leaves. It feels alive, but it's a threatening kind of life, one that's ready to swallow you whole. This isn't a movie with a traditional hero arc. Chris Taylor enters the war idealistic, ready to prove himself, but slowly realizes that nothing is black and white. What makes Platoon so powerful is its psychological war, the one happening inside the minds of the soldiers. There's no good versus evil here in the classic sense. Instead, we get a clash between two sergeants who represent opposite philosophies, Sergeant Elias, played by Willem Dafoe, and Sergeant Barnes, played by Tom Berenger. Elias is the moral compass, a man trying to hold on to his humanity in a place designed to erase it. Barnes is the opposite, a hardened, brutal survivor who believes morality has no place in war. The tension between these two men, and the effect it has on the platoon, is the emotional backbone of the film. You can argue that Elias and Barnes are two sides of the same coin, or even representations of a split in Stone's own psyche as a veteran. But to Chris Taylor, they are mentors, warnings, and spiritual guides, leading him in two very different directions. What makes the performances so effective is that they never feel like performances. Willem Dafoe brings a calm, almost tragic grace to Elias. He's weary but not broken. He smokes weed with the younger soldiers. He avoids unnecessary violence, and he still believes in something resembling justice. When Elias is on screen, there's a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, some part of the soul can survive this war. Tom Berenger, on the other hand, is terrifying. His portrayal of Barnes is cold, intimidating, and unpredictable. His scarred face isn't just makeup. It's a symbol of how the war has literally carved itself into his body. Barnes isn't a cartoon villain, though. That's what makes him even scarier. He believes in what he's doing. In his eyes, survival justifies any action. Civilians, enemy combatants, even fellow Americans. None of it matters if it means staying alive and completing the mission. Stone doesn't make the viewer's job easy. He doesn't tell you who's right and who's wrong. He doesn't moralize or offer clean answers. That's part of what makes Platoon feel so raw and authentic. It's not a story with a satisfying resolution, because the war didn't have one. Instead, he shows us the human cost, not just in lives lost, but in souls damaged, innocence destroyed, and friendships turned to ash. Let's talk about the supporting cast. This movie is loaded with familiar faces in early roles. Forrest Whitaker, Kevin Dillon, John C. McGinley, Tony Todd, even a young Johnny Depp. They each bring something different to the platoon, and together, they form a believable, fractured unit of men slowly falling apart. Some embrace violence. Others retreat into themselves. Some smoke weed and listen to music to cope. Others snap. One of the most memorable scenes in the film, and one that still stirs debate to this day, is the village scene. The platoon storms into a Vietnamese village after an ambush, frustrated and traumatized. What follows is a breakdown of discipline, morality, and sanity. There's shouting, threats, brutality. It's a moment that reminds us that the real horror of war isn't just bullets and explosions. It's what war does to the human heart. Stone doesn't shy away from portraying American soldiers as capable of cruelty. That was rare for the time, and still makes some viewers uncomfortable today. But that discomfort is the point. Stone wanted to tell the truth as he saw it. That Vietnam wasn't just about fighting the enemy, it was about fighting yourself. The scene is shot without glorification. There's no soaring music, no cinematic flair, just chaos, fear, and silence afterward. The film's score, composed by Georges Delerue, uses Adagio for strings by Samuel Barber to haunting effect. That piece of music, slow, mournful, and aching, became permanently tied to the film's most iconic moment. Elias running from the jungle, arms raised, as he's betrayed and gunned down. That scene, captured in slow motion against a sunset, has been parodied and referenced endlessly. But in context, it's devastating. It symbolizes the death of morality, the loss of hope, and the sheer helplessness of trying to do good in a place designed for destruction. As the film progresses, Chris Taylor is changed. He becomes more violent, more numb. The climactic battle, when the platoon is overrun during a nighttime assault, is pure chaos. Explosions, screaming, silhouettes in the firelight. It's one of the most intense combat sequences ever filmed, but Stone still centers it on human reactions, fear, rage, confusion. And in the aftermath, when Taylor finally confronts Barnes, we see that he's crossed a line. The war has claimed another victim, not through death, but through transformation. Platoon ends not with victory or relief, but with a plane taking Taylor out of the jungle. He looks back on the battlefield, his face hollow. His narration tells us that there were two people inside him, one who wanted to do right and one who didn't. That battle didn't end when he left Vietnam. It's still being fought inside him and maybe inside all of us. From a filmmaking perspective, Platoon is a masterclass. The cinematography by Robert Richardson captures the claustrophobia of the jungle and the raw intensity of combat. The editing by Claire Simpson keeps things grounded, rarely resorting to slow motion or melodrama. The production design is filthy, smoky, wet, exactly as it should be. But more than anything, it's Oliver Stone's personal connection that elevates this film. He wasn't just guessing what war felt like, he lived it. He served in Vietnam, was wounded twice, and came back disillusioned. That pain, guilt, and unresolved trauma bleeds into every frame of this movie. It's not a celebration of survival, it's a confession, a reckoning. The film was a massive success when it came out. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Stone. But more importantly, it opened the door for a wave of Vietnam films that weren't afraid to confront the ugliness of the war. Full Metal Jacket, Casualties of War, and Born on the 4th of July all followed in its wake. Even today, nearly 40 years later, Platoon holds up. It doesn't feel dated because its themes, morality and war, the loss of innocence, the duality of man, are timeless. It's still studied in film schools, still debated in classrooms, and still watched by veterans who see fragments of their own story in its frames. Of course, no film is perfect. Some critics argue that Platoon leans too heavily into symbolism, that Elias and Barnes are too archetypal, too black and white in a film that claims to reject black and white morality. Others point out that the Vietnamese characters are largely voiceless, background figures in a story about American soldiers. Those are fair criticisms. And it's true that the film is more concerned with the inner battles of its American characters than it is with the Vietnamese perspective. But within its chosen scope, Platoon remains one of the most honest, brutal, and emotionally complex portrayals of war ever made. It doesn't flinch, it doesn't wrap things up in a bow, and it doesn't give you a hero to cheer for. Instead, it gives you truth, or at least Oliver Stone's version of it. So where does Platoon sit in the pantheon of war films? Near the very top. It's up there with Apocalypse Now, Saving Private Ryan, and The Thin Red Line, not because it's the most epic or visually stunning, but because it dares to be personal. It dares to say that war isn't just about politics or strategy, it's about people. Messy, scared, angry people trying to survive an impossible situation. In the end, Platoon isn't just a film about Vietnam, it's a film about the war inside all of us, and that's what makes it unforgettable.